Welcome on in to another edition of I Am Thomas, and I Am Thomas. Starting off the new year right, try to put a lot more of these out there. Do subscribe to the channel, please. Kind of hit the notification bell, when I'm uploading. If not, you could always watch it on replay. This is like a podcast form, I guess you could say, where I talk about true crime stories. This is a true crime channel. It's also a pop culture channel. It's also a filming location channel. It's a little bit of everything. And, you know, with true crime, and if you've seen some of these videos that I do, also do famous graves, there's certain locations that I just cannot go to. Um, um, because, you got to work, you got to pay the bills. Not at the point yet where I could be a traveling YouTuber. Or just go out there and just film, which I love to do, and I love to vlog. So this is the next best thing. It's covering stories, and I try to do these maybe once every 2 weeks in this coming year, maybe once every year. Who knows? A little bit of here, a little bit of there. Just going over stories that I've come across. I love on Sirius. I love the HLN channel. They have a lot of like these true crime type of stories, right? And I entitled this episode, "The Maniac with the Mansion." It's about the Foster family that lived in Maysbrook. Now, Maysbrook, um, if you're not familiar with Maysbrook, that is a very, you know, well-to-do village on the Welsh border. The houses, they're vine-covered Gregorian mansions, beautiful homes. The cars parked in the driveways, Range Rovers, Porsches, very well-to-do neighborhood. Now, the people of Maysbrook are, by and large, self-made millionaires from Birmingham and Wolverhampton. Entrepreneurs who kind of made it big, so to speak. There was an individual in that village by the name of Christopher Foster. Now, Christopher Foster, he presented the image of a loving husband and a devoted father. Neighbors, they always remembered him as laughing, cuddling his 49-year-old wife, Jill, and how he doted is a better word, doted on his 15-year-old horse mad daughter, Christy. She loved her horses. In fact, Christopher was believed to have had at least 8 mistresses. So much for presenting yourself, right? Kind of what you see is not always what you get. He wasn't a good looking guy, are the reports, but money, well, uh, it did the talking. Money talked. Now, he wasn't called good looking by Ann Giddings, who was the sister of Jill Foster. And apparently, supposedly, it is also believed that Jill had affairs. It was what his PA termed an open marriage. His teenage daughter, Christy, loved the horses that her father had bought her. But she knew better than to get on the wrong side of his quick temper. 50-year-old Christopher was not a happy man. He hate he hated being still when he was at home. Despite having a housekeeper, he was always either fixing or cleaning something in his 3-story mansion or on his 16 acres of land. He had spent an elaborate amount on landscaping. His riding stalls and lake, they were picture postcard perfect. He had a barn that was spotless. And, the inside of his mansion, palatial, very beautiful home. He furnished the inside of that home with antiques. Now, not all of his purchases were authentic. And then again, neither was Christopher. What you see is not what you always get on the outside. He was known in the village as the millionaire. He had made his money in the oil business. In 1987, Christopher was just an ordinary guy, married with a sales job in Wolverhampton, was the village. The next year, the Piper Alpha oil platform explosion killed 167 men. Christopher, well, he had seized the moment. He invented and patented a new chemical formula for oil rig insulation. Chris saw this tremendous opportunity. He saw Piper Alpha in flames and considered his opportunity. He put everything into it. He took a risk. It's one thing that Chris was. He was a risk taker. And you think that you got to admire him for making it work. He had made a lot of money. At one point, he was, bringing product. He was, he was making a product. He was bringing a product, and he was putting a label on it and sending out the door, making 50 or 60% plus markup, a license to print money. And with this, Christopher and Jill, they had went on the first of many first-class holidays. They also moved from Telford to the more exclusive Maysbrook and into now a mansion of a home. Jill had been shopping in Sainsbury and she'd pick up the Shropshire life. She had picked up the life of being well-to-do now. And in there was a house that she fell in love with. They went the next morning and Christopher put in an offer the very same day. Now, even a bigger house. Christopher, with his newfound fortune, he had started to collect houses, classical cars, rather. His collection became a fleet. He had two, his and hers Porsche, an Aston Martin, and a 4x4 for his wife, with personalized plates, of course, that said Jill 40. And to go with the new country estate that he has there. He had a tractor, 3 horses, and 4 dogs. Do you have the white fence? To complete the image, Jill even owned doves. But while his invention that he had created was awarding, winning, and money making, he really wasn't making that much money, if you think of it. And I say this because Christopher and his family, they were living on credit. Like many before the great credit crunch, He never believed that the easy money would ever stop. Never, never will never end. It will always continue. Why would he believe otherwise? So everything was on credit. Added to that, Christopher, his behavior was erratic. He started to act dishonestly. 2003 came along, and Christopher had entered into contract with a company called DRC to manufacture his invention exclusively. In 2004, compared with 2005, his vast spending was outstripping his income. So, Christopher now tried to break the terms of his deal with the company of DRC, trying to get some type of more money because he's spending more than he's having. A lifestyle he can't keep up. DRC successfully sued. Lord Justice Rimmer said at the Royal Courts of Justice that Foster was bereft of the basic instincts of commercial morality. In English, that means it wasn't, it was not morally correct what he was doing. He was not to be trusted. The DRC took over his patent now. They made it a global success. Christopher's company went into liquidation in September of 2007. His salary was stopped, and a freezing order was put on his assets. On top of all this, he owed the Inland Revenue nearly £1 million. This is in England, I believe. For not only was Christopher a bad businessman now, greed got in the way of him, and a big spender, he was a poor taxpayer. He didn't pay his taxes. He didn't pay much of any type of tax at all. His life was spiraling out of control. And now he was left with nothing to do, really, but stay home. Christopher, he had a hobby, and that was clay pigeon shooting, which he did every Tuesday. And it is why he was allowed to own guns for clay pigeon shooting. Of course, being Christopher, he thought nothing of spending over exorbitant amount for a shotgun and a 3-day shoot. But whereas most use their hobbies to relax, Christopher, he couldn't. He had to come to first. He'd have to shoot more, fish more, and done more than the competition. Kind of a little bit crazy. That he was called a control freak. He wanted to be in control of things totally. His brother Andrew later revealed that when they were young brothers, Christopher had sexually abused him. The brothers they hadn't spoken for years. Christopher had lost his money making patent his company and effectively his wife, marriage and family. When a concerned friend had asked him, "Is he okay?" Foster replied, "Not really. I think everything's coming to a head for me." But when Christopher told others that they should look out after Jill and Christy if they topped himself, if he topped himself, they thought he was joking. Now, towards the end, Christopher had remortgaged his home 3 times. He had 20 different bank accounts. 20. One of them was overdrawn by an exorbitant amount. He faced personal bankruptcy. He had obtained antidepressants in the spring of 2008. He went to his general practice doctor. He admitted to feeling suicidal. He confided to a business associate that he'd rather take his own life than lose his family home. They're not having my stuff. I will top myself. They will carry me out of the house in a box. From a neighboring family. Well, let's backtrack. Backtrack. July of 2008, Christopher was parked up on his tractor. For no reason he could fathom, he decided to reverse the tractor. Minutes later, a massive branch, as big as a tree, broke off a willow. It crashed down just where he had been parked. Now, if he had not moved, he could have died. In August, the bailiffs had pinned a letter to the gates of the house. In the week before he died, Christopher looked online at websites, dealing with suicide, and looked through old photo albums of him and his family. Now, it's not known if by this point he had planned what had happened on August of 2008, and that would be the last day of his life. From a neighboring family, quote, "Absolutely stunned." That was the inscription on a floral bouquet that was left on the Foster family entrance. In total, 12 fire crews dealt with the fire, and it took investigators 7 days to remove all the bodies. On top of spent cartridges, they found a gun fitted with a silencer in the ashes. April 2nd, 2008, a 2-day inquest had started. Those present were able to watch the house closed circuit TV between 3:12 a.m. and 3:49. And that footage, it was unbelievably real. You couldn't believe what you were watching, and within the inquest, it was absolutely silent. You could see what he was doing, and it was like something out of a movie. It was unbelievable. The closed circuit TV, well, it had captured the shooting of a horse. It showed Foster setting on fire his stables. It showed Foster driving the horse box that he used to block the emergency services. Foster looked very calmly. He had gone about the complete destruction of everything in his life. The inquest had also found that Foster had been uh, drinking before the murders. Found out too that he was suffering from a heart defect, which was probably brought on by stress, supposedly. Now, the coroner ultimately recorded that Christopher unlawfully ended the life of his wife and daughter before ending his life. The inquest did reveal that perhaps mercifully both Jill and Christy were asleep when Foster had ended their life. Everything to live for, the coroner said. The coroner said that Miss Foster and her daughter had everything to live for. He also offered the possibility that Foster looked like he had planned his exit. He suggested that perhaps he left the closed circuit TV running as a witness of his actions for those remaining. He also recommended that as the gun owning Foster had warned, people of his feelings, that the doctor be informed of any application to pick up a gun license. It was view endorsed by Foster's surviving brother. Now, Christopher Foster's crime, though horrific, it is far from unique. The killing of one's family and then oneself may only represent about 6% of homicides in England and Wales, but it's common enough that there was a term for it. The family annihilated. The theory is that once the perpetrator decides on suicide, that they feel that they are free to kill without any consequences. Others believe that the suicide is only set up after the homicide as intense feelings of regret overcome the perpetrator. The Foster family, now they were laid to rest in 2008, in December. The relatives decided at that point to hold separate funerals. The first was for Jill and Christy. And a few years after that, Christopher was buried. Present were his surviving brother, Andrew, who later stated that he had no interest in claiming any stake in his brother's estate. And creditors at that point had until September of 2010 put in their claims. Now, if in case you're wondering what happened to the Foster family home, that home has now been cleared. It's not there no more. 2012, the property went up for sale. It had planning permission for another luxury 3-story mansion to be built in its place. A crime that's, made really, headlines and just, you think about it, how can you even begin to think about it, right? Now, when men are very much in that mood or feeling that their life has been successful, if something threatens to remove all that for some reason, sometimes it seems that men and that loss of power and control leads them to expressing themselves in an extreme form of violence. When they do this violence, it feels like it's some way of regaining some type of control. It's like saying, I can't have all this. It, if I can't have all this, if I can't have my beloved wife and child, and if I can't have my business and my beautiful home, then no one else is going to have it. It's that type of an attitude. This is a theory that, in the article that I read, that one of the researchers, of suicide after homicide believe. It's kind of, if it's not me, then no one else type of attitude. It was a bank holiday on Monday, August 25th, 2008, that the Foster family, had enjoyed their last day together. Christopher, his wife, and his daughter, they attended a house of one of another individual that had a big gated mansion. Who was a luxury car dealer. Was having a barbecue, clay pigeon shooting. Christopher went over, spent the afternoon there, and later he would say to Jill, "I've had enough. I want to go home." Now, despite Jill wanting to stay, they returned in her black Range Rover. Jill went to bed first. After midnight, his daughter Christy chatted to a friend online. That ended when Christopher turned the internet off. Christy went to sleep. Her father then fitted a silencer to a .22 rifle. Now, it's likely, they're saying, um, that Christopher shot his wife first. As the only other adult, she would have posed the greatest threat to Christopher's plan. He shot her in the back of the head in the bedroom. Foster, he then crossed to the hallway to his daughter's bedroom, and that's when he also took the life of his daughter in the back of the head. It was almost as if he was too ashamed to look at them in the face. And then Foster apparently calmly set about destroying everything that could be burnt. The man who had made a fortune of preventing fires now created one that would obliterate all traces of his existence. It is estimated that he flooded his mansion with 200 gallons of oil. He had spread that accelerant and oil soaked rags throughout the house to ensure that the fire took hold. 309, the cameras in his house, they show that Mr. Foster had set fire to his luxury home. He then destroyed all the family animals, destroyed all the dogs, all the horses, climbed the stairs and then he climbed the stairs one last time. Sickly, he laid down next to his wife that he had ended. He brought a loaded gun with him, but he did not shoot himself, the coward, nor did the flames burn him alive. Instead, smoke inhalation kills him. First crew arrived at 4:29 a.m., but they first had to move the horse box out of the way. By the time they could get close enough, there was little that they can do but contain the scene. The heat from the flames was so intense that all emergency services were unable um, to do much of anything. There you have it. Then it was just, you know, a recovery. That's what it was, a recovery mission. 5 days after the murders, that's when, investigators could finally enter the house. But even at that point, there was a risk of falling debris. Very sad case. And for what? Because your lifestyle, is about to change. You can't deal with that. There are other ways that he could possibly, if he would have, I'm sure, listened or tried to, just act differently, or maybe even be, mm, you know, I don't know. It looks like he asked for help. No one took him seriously, which, I guess there are other questions that you kind of, why wasn't he taken seriously? Very sad case in England's history. I think one of the most notorious cases out there. I hope all is well, and I look forward to speaking to you guys very, very soon. Do subscribe to my channel. Do have a couple of famous graves coming up. Some more crime scene locations, pop culture, all that good stuff. Hope all is well. The words of great Adam DeWoo, who is a big time vlogger, big influence why a lot of us on YouTube started our own channels. Rest in peace to a legend. The great Adam DeWoo, in the words of Adam DeWoo, this vlog